honestly eliminate humans and free people up to do their best work and focus on their role, the better. Because every time you insert people, there's a people problem that will get in the way. I'll just say, for me, it was just following my instincts, doing what I was really passionate about doing, raising my hand, taking initiative, saying yes when opportunities came my way, digging deep when things got hard, and really even just having to advocate for myself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by MarTech Edge, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in marketing technology. I'm your host, Sidesh, and today we have with us Lisa Sharapata, VP AI and GTM Strategy at Metadata.io. Lisa is a three-time CMO, GTM advisor, and revenue partner with 20 plus years of experience turning marketing into a true growth engine. So, without further ado, let's welcome her. Hey, Lisa, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're quite excited to have you, Lisa, and we're quite excited to see what wonderful insights you have for us.
Well, I hope I can meet up to those standards.
Well, first things first, Lisa. This point was really intriguing for me because we actually saw your LinkedIn, right? So you've shared a powerful story on LinkedIn about wanting to be an astronaut and discovering your place in mission control. So looking back, how did that early moment shape the way you think about leadership and problem solving today?
Yeah, well, I would say back then I was actually disappointed. Went to space camp, which was in and of itself a big feat for me. It took years of begging. And once I got there, I was hoping to be a pilot or a co pilot, right? And they have testing and scoring, and they put you in cohorts. And I was ranked third and put into lead mission control, and I was not happy about it. But over time, what I've come to realize is that was a really great role for me. And, I like to see the big picture and how all the dots connect and how everything works together to hit that, whatever that mission is. And, I can fly in real time and help make adjustments and figure things out and lead that way. And it's honestly been a lot of fun. And now that I look back, I'm like, oh, yeah, that was actually probably the best thing that could have happened to me. So, yeah, it worked out.
Fair to say the pressure test paved the way for your success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It also was one of the reasons why I pivoted even in my academics back in high school was I started to see what it would take to actually be an astronaut on the space shuttle and go into space. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's, what I'm cut out for. It's good.
Perfect, perfect. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our audiences that want to, get into Martech would be looking at your career path. So I'd love for you to share, how your career trajectory paved itself, and what are some tips you'd probably want to share with people that are wanting to get into the Martech landscape, Martech companies.
Well, I'll say I really didn't have an end game in mind. When I got in to the workforce after college, I started off in advertising agency on the creative side of things, which is what I went to school for. And I pretty quickly realized that I didn't want to be, told to make things smaller, change a font, and that wasn't enjoyable to me. I really wanted to understand the target audience, the reason why we were doing things, and I was really more a firm believer in the concept of form follows function. And who are you serving? What is the goal and objective of what you're doing? And so that got me in-house, and then pretty quickly more into the strategy side of things. And I'll just say, for me, it was just following my instincts, doing what I was really passionate about doing, raising my hand, taking initiative, saying yes when opportunities came my way, digging deep when things got hard, and really even just having to advocate for myself. I think that's what I tell my daughters too, is you are going to have to be your own advocate and go for it. There's no red carpet getting rolled out for you. So, figure it out.
I mean, I think that's gonna be a go-to motto, right? Just figure it out.
Well,
I
I
mean,
would
that's
say, and that especially right now, right? I mean, I just think it's doubling down on that.
I mean, that's a t-shirt quote. That's one of the things I'm gonna take back from this podcast. is that t-shirt. I think we can make millions out of it, just go figure it out.
All right, I'll go in with you on it. Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay. So you've said curiosity pulled you towards understanding the levers of growth, right? So looking back, what questions were you asking early in your career that ultimately changed your direction?
Yeah, a lot of why and who questions, but the moment that it all changed for me, I remember pretty distinctly. I went to work at Teradata, it was data warehousing, for a boss that I'd worked for way back in the day in a tech company. And she brought me in, and they had carved out a division for data driven marketing.
Okay.
And they brought in, a whole bunch of different companies that they acquired. And they were trying to create this new concept of taking the data, and they already had an analytics arm, and applying it to marketing. So I'm working on this campaign, and I came in, I was new. They were still trying to figure out their messaging. They didn't have all this stuff figured out. And we were working with an agency besides, and everything I saw, I'm like, I just don't get it. And so finally, we really had to strip it down and get in to do the persona work and the pain points that we were solving, and really try to also understand, like, what's that positioning piece to a CMO? Why would they even want data driven marketing? And it was like this new idea of this data is how you get the seat in the boardroom. And then I was working with a shared resource in demand gen, and they came with their plans of how they were going to help us roll this campaign out. And it was all print ads. I'm like, no, wait, it's got to be digital. This is data driven marketing. We need like takeover pages. And, these are all like new concepts. But like, that was when I really immersed myself into demand gen and the strategy. And we started to even do some account based marketing very early days. And that was like a game changer in my career, and when I really took a hard right into demand and the demand gen side of things. So yeah.
That's quite interesting how things do happen. I mean, that's quite interesting. Now, coming back, Lisa, you've seen different industries, different teams, and different stages of growth, right? So let's start broad. What's your core philosophy for building a go-to-market strategy in today's AI-powered world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, I've started in a variety of, like, all the way from like a Teradata is huge to a Series A. But the thing that I think is the most consistent is you've got to get that foundation right to scale. And when I say that, it means, not only is it problem market fit and then expanding into a product market fit, and kind of taking it step by step before you get to a platform market fit, but it's the building blocks that are going to help you design a system that will scale with you so that you're creating a repeatable, scalable program. So it's not just this like rebuilding everything from scratch every time, or throwing spaghetti at the wall and, not really sure like how you got the results. I find it really ironic, I'll just say too, is that I think we all know this by now, and we've all heard these things, but I think what AI has done is actually showed us where all the cracks in the foundation are and where we have data layer problems, because to leverage that data to scale and use AI in any sort of a workflow or an agentic way, it's got to be structurally sound and, crap in, crap out. And if you're augmenting something that is not, good data to begin with, you're not going to achieve the results you're looking for. So back to basics is really where I'm at with kind of core principles for scaling.
Makes perfect sense to me as well. Now, there's a lot of talk right now about autonomous agents, right? So, but the term means different things to different people. In simple terms, what are autonomous agents and how are they different from the AI assistants we are already used to?
Yeah, I see autonomous agents as something that's going to operate toward an outcome, but with continuous learning, and it's orchestrated in a way where it's a multiple systems that are working together to achieve that outcome. And again, there's continuous learning built into that don't require a human in the loop.
Got it. Now, this is where things actually get real inside companies, right? You've got marketing, sales, and operations. they don't always move in sync even without AI, let alone with AI, right? So, what's the biggest challenge when trying to align these companies or teams around agent driven lead workflows?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things. First of all, I'll just give two different examples. One example is something where it's kind of more of a turn it on, but again, you've got to have like the structurally sound piece working for it to work. So, for example, at Metadata, we have almost 100 different agents that are built out into an MCP server connector, and that connects in with Metadata's technology, which is digital advertising, and also your CRM. So if we say, okay, prompt this in Claude, for example, where we have our MPC server connected, I want you to launch a campaign that pulls in the best practices that we learned that worked in Q4, but I want you to update the audiences, let's say, to these things and go. Well, what Metadata has built in the back end is, again, all of these agents that are orchestrating. They can pull in different audiences, different offers, different creatives. And let's say I'm saying I want it to be optimized for pipeline generation, not cost per click, not now it's got a goal and it's saying, okay, now I can run all these different experiments behind the scenes without a human ever touching anything. I can adjust the bids higher or lower depending on, let's say a competitor comes in. I can pull this creative into this channel and that into that, and we're going to dial this in to get you that pipeline that you wanted based on the outcome you defined. And all the human had to do is say, here's my budget, here's my goals and objectives, here's the concept, and go. So in that case, it eliminates a ton of friction, right? And it just frees up, in this case, the marketer to be more strategic, try other things, maybe run other campaigns. So there's no friction there in that case, right? It's just making sure you get those quality leads that your sales team wants, which is always a pain point. But on the other side of things, there's definitely systems that I'm putting in place that go across teams. And I feel like it's the same story. Any place I've been, any place you have a human in the loop, there's going to be a bottleneck. There's still subjectivity and people who don't like something or don't do something or don't follow up with something. And so the friction points, the more you can honestly eliminate humans and free people up. And this is the biggest thing I want to drive home is free people up to do their best work and focus on their role, the better. Because every time you insert people, there's a people problem that will get in the way at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, totally in sync with you on this one. There's always a people problem, if I were to say it across that way. Now, let's look ahead for a moment, Lisa. What role do you think, when we spoke about autonomous agents, what role do you think autonomous agents will play in the next few years? And just as important, how will human creativity and strategy need to evolve alongside them?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a shock to the system. I'm already starting to see traditional jobs fall by the wayside, AI and agentic systems take over. And I just like last night, I was at dinner with Amanda Kalo from OneMind, and she has the superhumans, and that's kind of replacing multiple functions, but one of them would be like the SDR function. And maybe we still would have some SDRs that are focusing on your key accounts, but we also know that especially in B2B, most like in marketing, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. So if I can get as far along the path as possible without that and have, the right content served up and all of those things too, I think more and more we're going to see any place where there's friction in a buying process, there being less human involvement. But does that mean then we have other more strategic roles, or we're doing more, let's say, dinners and events and workshops and in-person things that people do want to participate in and help build relationships? I mean, I think there will be a balancing. And then I'm also seeing new jobs being created left and right to create these agentic workflows. If you're a builder and you can really get in there, there's tons of opportunity. So again, where there's a friction point in the process, I think the more you can remove humans, the better. I think we'll balance out on the side of needing more relationships and also needing more builders in the go-to-market strategy.
Perfect. and we usually ask a lot of folks around the same things, and sometimes we get some good nuggets out of those, right? So I generally had some questions for you because GDM, as I said, is very close to my heart. But you've been there, you've been across these years, having experienced the fact that we've coined the term smart, we've coined the terms ad tech when they weren't there as well. It was plain marketing at the start, and then AI came into picture, and it's changed GTM strategies across by a margin, right? And at the same time, we don't know what's in store in the next couple of years. So what is your verdict about, or if we bring the crystal ball out here, what's your opinion about what differences or what changes are we going to see in the next 5 to 10 years? How is it going to shape GTM strategies?
Yeah, I think the bottom line for me goes back to removing the human element out of the equation as much as possible. However, balancing that out with brand building and relationships, I think it's going to be more of a human to human, almost like B2C on the B2B side. I do think that that human part will matter. It's just not going to require all the hand holding to build everything and connect it all and make it all work. So that's kind of part one. And then, I mean, even everything I'm doing right now is like when I was at Sixth Sense, I was using third party intent, for example. And I was using that to create dynamic workflows to push people into audiences based on what we saw they were doing, but it was all black box. You had no idea really what was happening. And now people aren't searching keywords in Google. So everything I'm shifting is to try to get closer and closer to the prospect in their buying journey, whether it's changing my SEO into an AEO or GEO strategy, or like eliminating third party intent, but first and second party intent, building workflows off of those things and getting as personalized and focused as possible as quickly as possible. But that's back to the relationship part and the brand part and really establishing a connection as quickly as possible with as little friction as possible. So I think it's going to get more and more like that and better. And, more technologies are going to come out too. So we just have to kind of see what's all available and continue to evolve.
Absolutely. Totally in agreement with you, especially in the first part, because we're kind of seeing traces of B2B evolving the same way B2C is. So B2B is kind of getting into the same phase where B2C was, and the journey is kind of shaping up into the same stages which we usually see around the B2B, B2C line. So totally in agreement with you on that part. Well, the other question that I have is kind of a personal one. You just said that, as a marketer, you don't like speaking to sales folks. There's one right now I was just asking you.
Say that.
Okay. Well, why? I mean, let's put it out there. Let's make it more generic. Why don't marketers usually like to speak to sales folks, or what is it that sales folks can do better from a GDM standpoint, from a different standpoint as well, when they're trying to pitch products which can probably help them sell to marketers better? And this is something, as I said, this is personal. This probably wouldn't be there as a part of the podcast as well. Maybe if we believe it could work wonders, we would rather put it. But I just
Okay.
want to
Well,
understand.
no, I'll tell you my honest, heartfelt feelings about it is I've always worked as closely with the sales team as possible, and it's gotten more and more and more. But what I find is when things are going well, the sales team loves marketing, or depending on the individual reps pipeline and quarter, and when it's not, they're frustrated, and when they're frustrated, a lot of times marketing takes the hit for it, and vice versa too. I mean, as marketers got seats in the boardroom and had to report on things like qualified pipeline and conversion rates, and then you've got your future is basically in the hands of a seller. And so, I mean, that's part of why for me it's imperative that we're working really closely together, but also we're relying so much on each other. And so when things aren't going well, it's really easy to point fingers at the other team.
I mean, by your experience, do you ever think marketing and sales can agree on one thing for once and for all, ever?
I think that the roles are going to change a lot, and that we may get to a point where that is just not even a problem anymore. Back to like superhumans taking a sale. I mean, more product led growth, more service as a software. If you look at like Perplexity and I mean, their growth was product led. And that does not, that there's some marketing pieces in there and there might be a little bit of selling, but it's the friction gets removed because you're starting at the entry point. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that kind of stuff going on.
That's great to hear. And in your role, you've been actually close to, working with demand gen folks, doing demand gen yourself as well. So, I mean, that's closer to your heart as well, which I believe. How have you seen demand gen evolve across these years? What do you think has been a major impact in terms of how demand gen is perceived and how demand gen operates?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting partly because I came from agency side and brand was always kind of my first passion and instinct. And I do feel that brand drives demand. And I'm seeing that I saw this kind of valley where brand, you couldn't really put an ROI on it. And so you even would have to like hide your brand spend into like a demand program in order to get the budget for some of the like kind of core things. But now there's starting to become more of an emphasis on it. And then when you start thinking about shifts like going from an SEO strategy to AEO or GEO, then I start thinking back to like, well, if somebody sees metadata in an answer in ChatGPT and they have heard of us, and somebody sees it and they haven't heard of us, which person do you think is going to click on the link that takes you to the metadata page? It's probably the one who's heard of us. And so, we're starting to really try to balance things out more with a strategy of AEO, GEO showing up in the LLMs, and then layering that on top with, brand initiatives, whether it's advertising or events, being present in places where our people are in the communities and events that they go to, webinars we're hosting, you name it. Like we want to be seen everywhere. So that's a huge shift. And you're stuffing keywords to try to kind of trick the system to get people to come in and just be on the first 3 citations of Google, right? And that was a completely different mindset.
Perfect. I mean, that's great to hear how it has evolved, and thank you for your 2 cents about that as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, those were the only questions I had, and thank you so much. Again, as I said, there were some wonderful insights, and some of those which I've never heard before, some takes which I've never heard before. So, thank you so much to get a new perspective, to get a fresher perspective on these topics. I mean, that's a great insight to have something different than what we've had in the past in terms of a lot of conversations. But yeah, thank you so much for all the wonderful insights, Lisa. Really enjoyed hosting you on our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers. And thank you all for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with MarTech Edge for more insights. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Siddesh.